Hi, this introductory video will provide you some information on how to successfully complete the Module 2 assignment. So we'll go through it step by step like we did with Module number 1. So the first thing you do is you log into Blackboard, and then you go over onto the left and you'll see the tab that says Assignments. You'll click on that Assignments tab, and then you'll go to where it says the Module 2 assignment. When I click on Module 2 assignment, up comes the description of that particular module assignment. So first of all, just a general overview of the assignment. The purpose of the assignment is to expose you to alternative forms of assessment. So we're looking for forms of assessment that are different than the ones that you used in the first module. So in the first module, we use what's called selected response items, and those are items where students are selecting or choosing from a variety of options. And in this second module, we're looking at constructed response items, and those are the things that students construct from their own learning and understanding. So just like the first module, you're going to pick a curriculum area of focus. Now, for most people, they choose the same focus area that they did within the first module. The trick here is you want to be able to have performance kind of tasks that you can link to your unit or your curriculum. So if you don't have kind of larger scale things that can be assessed in a performance task way, it's going to be more difficult for you. So you want to expand that. And typically what I say to people for these larger scale assessments is that you can think about longer chunks of time. So things such as more than a full unit or a full semester, depending on what it is that you teach or what level it is that you teach, but something that has a lot of meat to it that you can use these assessment types with. So that's the purpose of the assessment. Again, like the others, this is something where you create these items from scratch. You're not using existing assessment items to take a look at that. So let's take a look at the procedures. The first thing you're going to do is you're going to write an introduction. And this introduction is a little longer than the introduction that you did in the first assignment. Introduction has 4 components to it. So the first component, you're going to describe the general focus of the study. And in this case, you'll provide an overview of the unit or the course. So you'll tell me kind of what the course is about, some ideas of the timeline, the scope and sequence, anything that tells you about the learning sequence and other assessments that currently exist. So this gives me a general sense of the actual content that you'll be teaching. The second part you'll do is you'll give me some description about the context of the assignment. And that will tell me the length of a class period or times per week or configurations of groupings. And it provides background for the reader of the plan to evaluate the appropriateness of the assessments for that particular context. Next, you'll describe the users of the curriculum, the grade, the age, any challenges or special needs. And then finally, in this introductory piece, you're going to provide a brief reflection concerning challenges you or others have had assessing the unit in the past, or challenges that you anticipate. So if you anticipate a challenge, you might want to think about what is the most likely mistake that students might make? What would be the hardest component of this particular unit and assessment? And reflect on pre-existing assessments, what currently exists, and a rationale as to why this was chosen. So that's a lot of meat to put in the introduction. It really gives a sense of the background and the context for this particular unit. So the next section should look familiar to you. This section focuses in on standards and targets. Just like it did in the first assignment, you're going to look at state and national targets, standards, and then you'll turn those into achievement targets, student-friendly targets, and identify the categories. So it's just like you did in the first assignment. The only difference is, there's 2 differences. One is I want you to think about more reasoning types of targets, so not just knowledge targets. We want to go beyond knowledge targets when we're talking about performance types of assessment. So you still have knowledge targets that are involved, but I want you to push yourself beyond those if that's the majority of what you currently had in the first assignment. Secondly, the second difference is in this one, I'm asking you to make sure that you add some disposition targets. You won't typically find disposition targets in your standards or curriculum, so you're going to have to create your own achievement targets that are based upon dispositions. And that's it for the standards and targets section. Again, it'll look like a chart, and each of the items will be numbered so that you can identify them later on. The following section is a section on a pre-assessment. So in this case, what I want you to do is I want you to think about what are the prerequisite skills that you want students to have as they move forward in the unit. So what have they already learned? So I want you to construct a pre-assessment that could assess that student understanding. Now, you can use similar or the same assessment items that you used in the first part of the course. You can use knowledge-based assessments, you can use selected response assessments, but basically you're going to present an assessment that you think would be in the easiest format for a pre-assessment. So it could include multiple choice items or true-false items or matching items, things such as that for the pre-assessment. The next part of it becomes really important. So that's not as difficult, again, because you can borrow from the first assignment, but you're going to construct the assignment. You're going to have, let's see here. Excuse me, let me get back to the pre-instruction part. So there's several components in the pre-instruction assessment or the pre-assessment. And the first is you're going to describe what prior learnings are assumed from past learning experiences. So you're going to explain what knowledge or skills you're counting on the students having before instruction begins. So this is like a purpose statement. You're basically saying, these are the kind of things I want students to know, and this is why I want them to know them. The second part, you're going to explain how you will pre-assess student knowledge and understanding, and you can do a general explanation within a few sentences of what that would look like. The third part that you need to do, and this is important, is to describe how you will use the assessment results to plan for instruction. So what kind of information do you actually think you're going to get from the pre-assessment, and how could you use that at a later point in time? So those first three sections, A, B, and C, are kind of like the purpose statement that you did in assignment 1 for each of your assessment items. So it's a general description of what that pre-assessment is about, and then on a separate page you'll include the copy of the assessment. So that's the second part. So first we do the introduction, then we do the targets, then we do the pre-assessment, and now we do the actual assessment items. So if we go to the assessment purpose and scoring, using sound design, you'll construct a set of assessments that will be used during a selected grading period. Each assessment should have a purpose statement and a scoring statement. So like the first assignment, you have a purpose statement, the actual assessment item, but in this case, you're also going to have a scoring explanation, because the types of scoring tools that you will use for these assessment items is a little more complex than what you use in terms of selected response items. So the first one you'll do is a written response. You'll write 3 to 4 written response questions with clear scoring tools. Develop the assessment in the form that you would present it to your students. And if you're working with younger children that can't write, you can use an oral format. So you would lay out this section in the following way. The first part is you would give the purpose of the assessment. And this is just like it was in the first assignment. You'll say, is it an example of or for learning? Where does the assessment fall in the instructional sequence? Why do you need to give an assessment at this point in time? why would this particular form of assessment be appropriate, what information will be collected, and what, if any, factors might impact reliability or validity. So those are the kind of things that you can include in your purpose statement. So you write the purpose statement. Part 2, you actually put the assessment in there. So just as the way students would see it, I would include what that assessment is, and next to each item I will put which achievement target is being assessed for that particular item. And then the final part you'll do, which is different than you did in the first assignment, is you're going to do an explanation of the scoring process. And for this, you'll explain your reasoning for selecting the scoring tool. You'll explain the structure and the purpose of the scoring tool. You explain what information you can gain from the tool. And when you give that information, be specific about the type of information that can be gained. And identify any challenges or limitations that this method or tool has in meeting the purpose. And then you'll insert the rubric or the scoring tool. So you have a purpose statement, the actual assessment, you have an explanation of scoring, and then the actual scoring tool and what that would look like. So that's the first one, which is written response. The next one is a performance assessment. And when you develop a performance assessment, you're going to use the GRASP model, the GRASPS model, which is presented in your course, and it's in one of the PowerPoint presentations to help you out. And you'll use at least 2 types of scoring tools for this task. So you'll have one task, but you'll have more than one form of scoring tool. So you'll do part 1, the purpose of the performance assessment, using the same criteria that you have up to this point in time. Part 2, you'll identify the GRASP performance assessment. So you'll put the performance assessment down just in the way that students would see it. Part 3, you'll give an explanation of the scoring and recording procedures for this performance assessment. And step 4, you'll insert the 2 rubrics, or the rubric and the scoring tool that will be used for this performance assessment. So again, the same components, a little bit different is that you'll have 2 scoring tools. And then finally, you'll create a disposition assessment. Same as the others, but in this one, you're going to give the purpose of the disposition assessment, the part 2, the disposition assessment itself, and part 3, what would you do with the data that you collect? Because a disposition assessment can be written, but then the question is, you're not giving it a grade, so what do you actually do with the data for a disposition assessment? And then you write a paper conclusion, what you've learned from this assessment planning process, and what you will do with the plan. How will you be scored with this? Well, first you'll have the presentation of the paper overall and the introduction, how well you've addressed each of the elements within the introduction. Secondly, you'll have the targets which would be evaluated, how well you have aligned the target and the standard, as well as the student wording of the standard and the category. You'll take a look at the written response assessment, what that looks like and what the scoring looks like. We'll look at the performance assessment, the disposition assessment, and I'm going to look at your 2 scoring tools to see whether they address sound design and whether they're different. So I should see, and it can be any place located within your assignment, that there are 2 different types of scoring tools that can be used to evaluate. And then the overall presentation of the assignment. And that's it. So those are the elements that would be included in assignment number 2.